said, this is the first time in a week we've seen the sun. Wow, that's true. So it's been a gloomy type of week. Just to let you know the change in the worship order. When I'm done preaching, we're going to sing the song In the Garden on page 270. We handed out hymn books. We got, let's see, they're not here yet.
I think Michelle is on.
Okay. Not real good news about Jean today. Her daughter's requested that we sing this song this morning. So I didn't do that in preparation for our prayer time. I'm done preaching. You know, for most of my life, the most popular verse in the Bible was John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Rightfully so, that would be very popular, right? You have the great God of heaven, the creator God, who had a love for his creation, friend and foe. He loves them all. And that love led him to give his only begotten Son. Now, I'm kind of a stickler to include that word begotten, although a lot of people today don't know what that means. But I'm going to tell you what it means. I think there are translations that mistranslate that verse and take that word out and they call him the only Son of God. I've heard prayers that Jesus being the only Son of God. That's not true. I'm a son of God. Right? You're a daughter of God. The difference is I'm not an only begotten Son of God. To be an only begotten Son means to possess every characteristic of the Father. There's only one Son like that, and that's Jesus. And God gave him his only begotten Son to save us. And that's the greatest news that could ever be told. Yet in recent years, that most popular verse has changed. It's no longer that good news of John 3:16. It's now the non-condemning verse of Matthew 7:1 is the most popular verse in the Bible. Do not judge so that you will not be judged. We live in a narcissistic world, do we not? Where everyone is right. Everybody gets a trophy. And how dare we are told we cannot judge another person. Who are we to be judged? Have you gotten that from people? However, to be fair, you really need to take a look at the whole passage. And so let's pick up with verse 2, where Jesus says, for the way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. And so the standard you use for judging people is going to be the same standard God's going to use on you. All right? You see that? But before we really get into it, let's read the whole text. Matthew chapter 7, beginning with verse 1. We'll read to verse 6. Do not judge, so that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, for they will trample them under their feet, and turn and tear you to pieces. To judge or not to judge? That is the question. And the proper answer comes from a closer look at what we just read from Jesus. But I want to look first at some instances where Jesus' words are misused. Okay? Such as people are saying that Jesus, because they cut that passage off, just don't judge. They forbid all manners of judgment, like in adverse or unfavorable criticism, even constructive criticism. You try to be nice, you try to muster up as much love as you can, and you try to correct someone, and if they don't say it to your face, they say it as they're leaving you, who are you to judge me? Right? They don't take it very kindly, even if it's constructive. Even in the exercise of church discipline. Now, exercising church discipline certainly calls for a manner of judgment as to a person's moral and spiritual condition. But people take that one part of that verse and say that that rules out church discipline. You can't judge people like that. Or exposing those who are teaching error. And admittedly, figuring that out, it takes a judgment to determine if someone is teaching error. And so therefore, some people, because they take one verse out of context, believe that you cannot speak about people teaching error. How do you know that's an error? I have a DVD that, if ever weather prevents me from getting here on Sunday, it is in the top desk drawer. It's called Evolution versus God. And the guy doing the interviews is talking to these liberal, atheistic professors of biology and geology and all this kind of stuff. And this one professor said, don't you think you could be wrong? And this guy said, no. I'm not wrong with the Bible. So, is that what Jesus means? No judging at all? Well, you can't remain silent when you see somebody overtaken in a fault in the church and bringing reproach on the name of Christ or blatantly teaching error. So let me suggest that Jesus did not rule out all forms of judgment. And so as we look at the immediate context, it reveals that there are some cases where proper judgment must be made. For instance, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 6, it implies it is to be made as to who are dogs and who are hogs. Did you get that? You know, don't cast your good stuff before dogs or swine. And so he said, do not give what is holy to dogs. Do not throw your pearls before swine, or they'll trample them under their feet and tear you to pieces. But without judgment, how do we know what holy things not to throw before the dogs? Without judgment, how can we determine what pearls not to cast before the swine? It takes judgment. In verses 15 to 20, it implies that we must make the judgment determining who's a false teacher. Beware of the false prophets, Jesus said, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruit. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles, are they? So every tree bears fruit, bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then you know them by their fruits. Get that? You know them by their fruit. Like what? Easy target. Easy illustration is these health and wealth preachers. You know those guys? You turn on your TV this morning, you probably saw one of them. That God, wants you healthy, wants you wealthy type stuff. And you hear them talk about how much we need to take care of third world situations and take care of the poor in our community. And yet these guys live such lavish lifestyles. Not good. By their fruit, you will know them. Now there's some distant texts which speak of times when judgments not only can be made, but absolutely must be made. Jesus taught people to judge with righteous judgment. Listen to it, John 7, verse 24. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Take professional help in this, that one. Now, Christians have a responsibility to judge those who are inside the local church. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, just to set the scene, there was a gentleman, young man in the church that was having an affair, apparently, with his stepmother. And the church, because it must have been a prominent family in the church, they kind of turned a blind eye toward it. And so here's where we get the teaching. I wrote you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. And I did not mean at all the immoral people of this world, or with the covetous, or the swindlers, or the idolaters, for then you would have to go out of the world. You expect it out there. You expect it from people that don't know Christ, right? That's not what he's talking about. We don't judge them. But he goes on to say, but actually I wrote to you not to associate with any so-called brother if he is an immoral person, or covetous, or an idolater, or a viler, or a drunkard, or a swindler. Not even to eat with such one. And so there's church discipline. So if something becomes public, it must be dealt with publicly. Right? Had a situation where something became very public as the woman's midsection began to expand. And she was pregnant and not married, and so she was a Christ follower. She was following Jesus the best she could. She made a mistake, and she came and told the church about that. But there are people that are, you talk about covetous. George Fall said that when he went to a church as a young preacher, he went through the roll books and saw a lot of names that he never saw in church. And so they wrote a letter to those people and said, listen, if you don't start attending again, we're going to take you off the membership roll. And then they followed it up with a visit to the people. So he showed up at this one house, and the husband met him at the door and said, look, if it isn't the little pope trying to kick my wife out of the church, are you? And he happened to look down and see that man wearing a Masonic ring. So I see, you're amazing, that's right. He said, what do you do with your members that don't attend and don't pay their dues? He said, we kick them out. I said, that's kind of what we're doing. I said, I like you. Why is it proper to discipline that? Because it's covet. They're covetous. They're covetous of God's money. They don't tithe to Him. They don't give an offering to Him. They're covetous of God's day. His time to come and worship Him. So that is a reason to discipline people, which takes judgment, or drunkards, or swindlers. He says, for what have I to do with judging others in verse 12? Do you not judge those who are within the church? But those who are outside, God judges. Remove the wicked man from among yourselves. And so, in other words, this guy that's having the affair, kick him out. And God forbid that we'd ever have to practice church discipline. I never want to do that. That's very tough. It's very difficult. And a lot of tears have been shed by those talking about the discipline because it's difficult. And so and notice that when they're disciplined, if we have to discipline somebody, we don't even eat with them. Why is that? Well, there are two major purposes for church discipline. One is to restore the person. And so for that person to not have your fellowship or your encouragement, hopefully they realize what they're missing and it encourages them to come back. But the second purpose is the purity of the church. Jesus is coming for a pure bride, not a church with all this hidden sin or public sin that we turn a blind eye to. That's not who he's coming for. We're taught by the apostle of love, John, to test the spirits, which requires judgment. So there's no contradiction between other writers and Jesus, because as we continue back in the text of Matthew chapter 7, we see that Jesus defines what kind of judging is improper and that he condemns. For instance, judging when one is blind to his own or her own faults. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? And how can you say to your brother, take that log out of your own eye? And then you'll see clearly to take out the speck in your brother's eye. And so Jesus is saying it's absolutely wrong for anyone to concentrate on a minor detail in a person's life while harboring a major detail in their own life. He seems to be telling us, get rid of those major things in your life first before you start nitpicking and trying to get that little speck out of your brother's eye. Now, Paul taught the necessity of introspection when helping others in Galatians chapter 6. He said, brother, even if anyone is caught in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore one in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourself, so that you too will not be tempted. And so it takes judgment in that part, but notice how the judgment comes with gentleness. So Jesus condemns judging without mercy and love. An author, Hendrickson, said, the Lord is here condemning the spirit of being very critical, judging harshly, self-righteous, without mercy, without love. As the parallel passage in Luke chapter 6, verses 36 and 37 clearly indicates, be merciful as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged, and do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Pardon, and you will be pardoned. But it's how you judge as we look at all the scriptures together. We don't pull something out of context and build a doctrine around it. We take a look at everything. James warned against making judgment without mercy in chapter 2 and verse 13. So what's he saying here? If you're making judgments without showing mercy, when it's time for you to be judged, you will not receive mercy. You see that? Same thing Jesus said. Chapter 7, verse 2. The judgment you use is the same judgment that you will be judged by. The same amount you use will be measured back to you. And so the implication is not we should never judge, but that when we do judge, remember that we will be judged by the same standards that we judge, that we use. So let mercy, let love temper all your judgments. Not hypocrisy, not anger, not bitterness. Now there are times when we must absolutely make judgments. But it's after we've corrected our own faults, we've gotten rid of that beam out of our eye. Take care of those things first, and then we can judge between those worthy and those who are hogs and dogs. Some are not worthy of that which is holy. Determining who calls for judgment on our part. So stay away from the forbidden judgment based on self-righteousness and hypocrisy. Be willing to get rid of that large beam out of your own eye and limit your judgments to the Word of God. To the Word of God. Let Him make the judgment and not your opinions. See, a lot of times we come down on people because we feel a certain way, or we have this certain opinion that's not biblical. So can you imagine getting up to the judgment seat of Christ, and all of a sudden He uses your opinion against you? That's what's going to happen. And then once we do that, stay in the Word, keep love and mercy flowing, will be useful in helping people with their problems. But to say that we should never judge is an abuse to the words of Christ, because He does not say that. Now, speaking of judging, there's going to be a great judgment day. The Bible says that we will all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. The judge. But it's interesting to think about Jesus as He's not only your judge, but He's your advocate. He's your lawyer. And so we see in Revelation that the accuser of our brethren shows up in the courtroom. And I take it he'll make all kinds of accusations against us. The accuser of the brethren. And our advocate will say to his Father, for final judgment. John chapter 12, verse 48 says, Jesus said, "He who rejects me and does not receive my sayings has the one that judges him. The word I spoke is that which will judge him at the last day." A lot of things happen in that last day. A lot of judgment. But final judgment isn't really to find out if you're guilty or innocent. It's really just confirming what you already determined. Because when you expire from this world, you've sealed your eternal destiny. Judgment just confirms it. But in the sense of a judgment in the courtroom, it seems like the book of life is going to be open. We've read about that, right? That all the saved are in that book of life. And probably not as thick as you think it's going to be, because the Bible says narrow is the road and few find it. If there is a book about those that are condemned to hell, it's going to be a whole lot thicker than the book of life. But then there's going to be another book that's open, and it's the book that I have in my hand. My word will judge you in the last day. And so you have these people that say, well, you know, I heard that preacher Strunk talk about baptism, and you know, I just didn't feel it was important. And God will probably say, I appreciate your honesty, but what did my word say? This will be open that last day, and judgment will be handed down. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, "For we must all appear," here it is, "before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may be recompensed, repaid for his deeds in the body, according to what he had done, whether good or bad." You'll be repaid. You'll be rightfully repaid. So prepare for that day, because that's eternity is a long time. To our young people, life seems to be a long time. What do you guys think about someone that's 55 years old? Old guy, right? So I know that 75 are really old, right? 80s, ancient, that kind of stuff, right? Not true. Seems like it. But eternity is so much longer. We've used all these illustrations. You know, you have a bird that empties the eastern seaboard of sand and deposits it over on the west coast. By the time he empties the eastern seaboard of sand and deposits it on the west coast, eternity has just dawned. So I heard a quartet singing one time, the gospel lad, and one of the bass singer, the deep voice said, I see heaven will sing for 1,000 years, take a 10-minute coffee break, and sing for another 1,000 years. It's a long time. And so you'll want to make sure you come down on the right side of God's judgment when that time happens. We're going to change up our program here just a little bit. And thank you guys for coming this morning.